beginning, you talked about your passion for training and developing teams. Actually, I'd like to take one step back, and it's in. I think everybody has a particular formula on how to hire the right people. I think in the past, just seeing the people that you've hired, myself included, I think you've done a good job. So, what's
Let this be the
your
record. Let this go on the record. Yeah, I was going to say thank
exactly?
you.
What's your special sauce? What's your take on hiring? What do you look for?
Yeah, such a great question. I think like you have to know what you're hiring for. Like that's first and foremost, and every company is different, and I think that's the one thing is, what you and I looked for at Canva might be completely different from what I'm looking at for at demand base. So come in and
Yeah.
understand like your unique sales context and really be, I would say thoughtful and intentional about like what are the requirements for each of the roles. I think sometimes, that doesn't get often recorded or it gets recorded and it doesn't evolve. And so I'd say like that's one thing that I love to layer in is that, the people that you hired 3 years ago may not be the same, profile that you want 3 years later, right? And so how are you evolving, those profiles and being intentional about it and
Yeah.
making sure that you have an understanding of, a scorecard of what you're looking for. So I think like first off, like, I like to set that up front. But I think like my secret sauce, I think, is also just getting to the core of understanding, people and motivations and drive. And I think like one thing that is consistent with all the companies that I've worked at is that, if you find people that work really, really hard and have kind of the grit and tenacity and they're intelligent and curious, like they will fit in most contexts. And so I think like grit and hard work is
Mm.
something that I try to really dig into, and I think that's probably one of the hardest things to interview for.
Yeah.
My thoughts on that is that if I were to ask Jorge in an interview like how hard do you work, like you being a smart interviewer would say like he wants to know that I work hard, so I'm going to tell him every cliche. I'm going to say everything that's makes him feel like I'm going to be a hard worker here, and so. I try to actually like, again, put people at ease. I have more of a like a more casual styled interviewing, but it is like I want to get to know you, I want to understand you, and I really look for things in their kind of past to tell me that they're hard workers, right? Like looking at their career progression and trajectory. Are they someone who gets kind of pulled from place to place? Where do they go? Someone took them there. To someone who was willing to like step up and raise their hand and lean into some of these kind of uncomfortable challenges, like looking at some of those things, and even like going back to as far as like their childhood. Like one of my infamous favorite questions to ask was tell me about the first job you ever had. What did you learn from it? What did you take away from it? And oftentimes people usually are like, this is that job that I got right out of college, and I'm like, no, like the first time, like actually like take me back to like when you first started working. What were you doing? And how did you, again, what did they learn and take away as the biggest part of that? And there's really no wrong answers. You can tell like how they light up, how they respond to it. A lot of times it can be like, I was, wasn't going to get a car. My parents made that clear early on. So like if I wanted to have a car, I would need to save up. So I, started working at an early age and this job and that job, right?
Mm.
And I was able to buy that car, right? Seeing their them light up about being able to achieve that accomplishment. Starting early, working when their friends weren't. Like, there's just some things that you'll get out of that. And my belief is that like work ethic isn't something that just strikes you at like age 27. I think it's something that kind of starts early in you.
Yeah.
And it'll give you some insight into that. So I have had some really great stories of, again, folks who were like, it was this first job out of college, and I'm like, no, take me back to like the very first time you can remember, and one person was like, look, I actually talked the manager into letting me work because like you had to be a certain age and I wasn't that yet and they let me do it. And, because they took a chance on me, like I had, more, they were a lifeguard and they saved more people than anybody else, even the other folks there, even down to like an AE who, really surprised me, but basically said like, hey, I lived in Laredo, which is a border town of Mexico. My grandfather moved over, or migrated over with like nothing but the shirt on his back. And he's like, at age 13, I was pulling tires,
Wow.
out of a warehouse and putting them on cars and sweating out my body weight. And these tires weighed sometimes more than me, and I'm like, okay, well, what were you proud of? And he was like, look, I respected the hell out of my grandfather for being able to provide this opportunity for me. I wasn't going to squander it, right? And so, I made sure to go to college. I made sure to do, X, Y, Z, and that's why I'm here today. And I was like, okay, this person's got it. So, anyways, I think it's, really down to getting to understand them, getting to know them, and understanding drive and motivation there.
So you know what I'm going to ask you next, right? What was your first job, and what did you learn from it?
Wouldn't it be pretty awful if I was like, well, I didn't start until 27. No. I love this one, and actually, I feel like you and I talk about parenting as well.
Yeah.
Like I want to make sure that my kids have the same thing, in them as well. But my dad was the first in his family to go to college. He was pretty direct with me that like everything, I'd have to earn it on my own. And so we grew up in a beach community. He ran beach pavilions, which is, these places where you can kind of rent a volleyball, get a hot dog or a hamburger, in a bathing suit, and they had the bathrooms there. And so when I was, I think 12 or 13, I was cleaning the bathrooms. Like that was the first job he gave me, which like if you were like, talk about shitty jobs. I'm like, yeah, literally. They would blow a whistle every hour on the hour, and I would go in there and I'd clean the bathrooms. And then like the next year after that, he was like, you get to work in the kitchen, and like you're gonna clean the grills and like clean the grease traps and mop the floors, and so on and so forth. And every year I got to build up higher on the ladder. But when I was in high school, my senior year, I was actually managing a couple of the locations. And I remember hearing someone who was 26, 27. He was like, listen to him, not because he's the boss's son, but because he's done every job in here. And if you want to know how to get it done, he'll tell you how to do it. And I was like, okay, I've earned the respect. And so I think for me, that was kind of like that pride moment of like, okay, it wasn't given to me, it was earned, which was cool.
Absolutely.
How about you? I guess if I can flip it around here,
Oh,
I
man.
don't think I ever asked you.
So, I lived near a lake, and when I was 10 years old, me and my older brother, we would go out in a canoe. We had one of those transistor radios, and we would put in the canoe, and our job was to clean up algae and whatever fell in the lake, right? So it was. And it was actually really nice because we would spend the summers out on the lake, and we would just hustle. And our goal was to buy a CD player. And of course, we were getting paid like $1 an hour, so it was so it was good child labor there. But it was great. I mean, I remember it quite fondly.
Yeah. And did you get the CD player? That's the most important part.
We got the CD player. We got the special one where you can actually put 5 CDs and then
A changer. Wow. All right.
exactly.
Things our kids will never know existed here.
Exactly. John, when you find that great person, how do you manage them? So how do you keep them motivated? How do you keep them hungry? Or do they need to be kept hungry? What's your take on management?
Yeah, look, I do. I personally, believe that like you need to tap into people's potential, and even, I think we, if we need to motivate folks to do their job, I think then we probably, to one part of your question, we made a mistake, right? In the hiring there. But if we're hiring very smart, capable, motivated people, look, I think you need to understand how to tap into what makes them tick and what makes them unique. And also, like, that's the way that you get, more out of them and also help them reach their potential. And so, long-winded answer to say, like, I think with each of them, you have to kind of tailor it and, like, learn that early on. And that becomes, that comes out of, like, your early one-on-ones and in the process, getting to know them and understanding what motivates them, what drives them, and then really being able to kind of like translate that back to them. But you get so much more if you can unlock that piece, and that they'll value you more as a leader too, because you've taken the time to understand that. And so, I think early on in my career, I do think like I had the quick learning that not everybody is motivated the same way and wants to be recognized the same way. Like I was in a meeting with a lot of leaders in like engineering, and they were like, what's your favorite like way to be recognized? And like one of the sales leaders was like, I closed a big deal. The CEO had me up on stage, wanting to hear me tell my story of this big, win we had, right? And this engineering leader was like, that is my worst nightmare. And so like, I think, again, figuring out really quickly that people do, want to be recognized and they want to be motivated in different ways. Yeah. And then just kind of figuring that out and trying to tailor to them and unlock that, I think you become a better leader.